too late, Alan. You're too late!
Well guys, it's the end of an era. After 10 years, the DCU is coming to an end. This polarizing franchise that has had some highs and some major fucking lows. And finally, after 10 years, we see the final film of this franchise, except for that one, I guess. And this conclusion was a little rocky. To be clear straight out the gate, I think this is a totally fine movie. There's a lot to like about it, but it's also a very odd and messy movie with several questionable choices. There's a lot of really bad and basically unfinished effects that the director Andy Muschietti claimed to be a stylistic choice, which I don't know how you can spin that one, dog, but good luck, I guess. But a lot of the effects in this movie look like PlayStation 2 cutscenes. Character models tend to look very stiff and like really shiny. It's distracting and it borders on uncanny at times. That's not to say all the effects are bad though, because some are pretty solid. Everything with Supergirl and the Batman look great.
That's a good name for a band, Gary. You should write that down. I will.
It was just mostly the Flash scenes that looked kind of bad, which really shouldn't have been the case in a movie about the fucking guy. Every time he gets going, he does that stupid wavy run that everyone hates. It looks like he's just ice skating across the ground. Then the entire screen is turned orange, like extremely orange. It's hard to look at. Why is this a thing all of a sudden? Whenever he ran in the past, it looked pretty good, especially when Snyder did it a few years ago. But here it just looks like they couldn't decide on a visual style. It also kind of seems like they relied on this filter to cover up the unfinished effects, but it doesn't really work at all. Luckily, not all the super speed scenes look that bad though. Some are actually kinda decent, but just decent shouldn't be really acceptable in a modern blockbuster film in my opinion. Superhero movies should look amazing considering the source material they're based on. The blockbuster genre has been making major strides in the last year alone with films like Avatar, Spider-Verse, and Nope, Everything Everywhere All at Once, shit like that, dude. So to release a film with effects this bad and just expect people not to be upset is insane to me. But like I said, some of the effects are pretty good, and it results in some fun ass action sequences. Sasha Calle is great as Kara, even though she's only here for like 20 minutes. Please keep her when you guys make that Supergirl movie, please! And her fight against Zod is pretty badass, she fucks him up, dude. The whole final battle was actually pretty great despite its extremely bland environment. It showcased everyone's abilities well and it was a pretty fun time, until it wasn't. Both Supergirl and Batman die in this final battle, and I just think that was a little cheap. Remember how No Way Home made everyone think for a second that Toby was actually gonna die, but then they decided not to because it would have been stupid? Yeah, me too. It's a cheap and lazy way to get some kind of emotional reaction out of the audience, and it didn't work at all. You guys know I love Michael Keaton's Batman, so it's not like I'm not attached to this character or something. It's just the writing's fault, because his death had like no emotional weight. He dies fucking twice and nobody in my theater even reacted. But that being said, I did kinda enjoy his presence in this movie. It's definitely not comparable to Andrew or Toby in No Way Home, but it was a lot of fun. I'm just glad I got to see him in action again, and speaking of which, this is some of the best Batman action since BVS. I've told you guys before that I really want Batman action to be more fantastical or whatever. Most Batman adaptations in the last 20 years have focused on realism, which kinda limits the character's abilities in my opinion. But this movie fully embraces the source material, and as a result we get some pretty dope Batman moments. Apparently Andy here is set to direct the Brave and the Bold movie, which is an idea I'm not fully with, but at least I know that the guy would make some fun ass action sequences. Like the Soviet base scene in this one is probably my favorite part of the whole movie. Speaking of which, I've heard a lot of people say that the third act of this movie kinda killed it for them, and I understand that a bit. There's definitely points where it starts to create plot holes and it drags for a little bit. But for me, it was kind of the opposite. For like the first 15 to 20 minutes, I did not think I liked this movie at all. After seeing that stupid fucking scene where he saves all the babies from the falling building, I was like, well, I spent money on this and there's no going back now. But once Barry goes back in time and actually starts the real plot of the movie, I was getting really into it. Sure, it's not a groundbreaking plot or anything, it's no Spider-Verse, but I don't think it was trying to be. It's just a fun time travel movie. It takes inspiration from shit like Back to the Future. There's a fair amount of jokes in this movie. A lot of them don't work, but when they did work, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
I'm slow.
A lot of people think that young Barry is annoying, and I can understand why. I mean, every time the dude laughs, he sounds like the surfer from SpongeBob. But other than that, I thought he was a pretty fun character, and his presence allowed for the actual Barry to be more of an interesting main character in my opinion. I've talked about this before, but I kind of found this Barry Allen to be a little annoying in previous films, but here I really enjoyed him. Since he has to deal with a younger version of himself, he's kind of like the straight man of the two, which is a very enjoyable dynamic, I think. And Ezra Miller also does a decent job as playing Barry. Not to give them too much credit, I think they're an awful fucking person, but I actually enjoyed their performance at times in this movie. I wouldn't really call them Barry Allen though, it just kind of feels like a random guy got fucking super speed and called himself the Flash. This version of the character does not really act like Barry Allen at all in my opinion. If you want a better adaptation of it, I just say Grant Gustin works more. This Barry even tells his younger self that he shouldn't want to be a superhero because it's not fun and it's scary, but Barry Allen wouldn't feel that way. Barry Allen fucking loves what he does. He's like one of the few superheroes who's just excited to be a superhero. But you can maybe equate this to the fact that this Barry Allen's like almost 30 now and is just a little bit tired of, you know, the shtick. But yeah, I did really enjoy these two's dynamic. I do think it would have been pretty nice to see Grant Gustin and that other fucking dude, I don't remember his name right now, from the 90s show in any shape or form whatsoever. But they don't really appear in this movie at all. Like, it didn't have to be something groundbreaking, but it needed to be something, you know, like a nod to the two people who kept this character alive on the screen for fucking years before he ever got a movie. I mean, I don't know for sure if it's gonna happen, judging by the way that this film's box office is turning out, but Andy Muschietti very much wants to do a sequel where he focuses more on this storyline and time travel and reverse flash, blah 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 blah. So maybe, and this is just a theory, they were planning on saving these two Flash for a sequel in the future? I know that's hopeful thinking. They could have just completely overthought these guys, and which is fucked up, but just let me have some hope, you know? Michael Shannon's General Zod returns, and I was actually pretty excited about this at first because you guys know if you watched my Superman video, but I enjoyed his performance quite a bit. I think it was a lot of fun, but here, he just doesn't care. And I'm not just like assuming that, I mean like for real. The dude gave a quote about how he like basically didn't give a shit about this movie and he equated it to slamming your action figures into each other. He's not on screen very much at all, like he's very underutilized when he is there. When he speaks, man, it's so robotic and by the book. There's no fucking passion or energy behind it at all. He's just like, yes, the toddler, he did not survive. It's like, okay. It's just disappointing is all, because I really did like this General Zod before. Also, major spoiler here, but the main villain, technically, of this movie would be the Dark Flash, I guess? He literally shows up for two scenes, one where he just punches Barry through a portal at the beginning, and then at the end where he's like, this whole time I've actually been young Barry. To give credit where credit is due, I actually didn't see this coming until like Barry started having all these weird protruding things sticking out of him for no reason. But it did kind of catch me off guard, so props to them, props to them. Also, I think the emotional conflict of his mom is handled pretty decently well. She's barely in the movie, she's only here for like a few scenes. But that grocery store scene, man, was actually really good. Just watching Barry have to basically accept his mom's death right in front of her is painful, dude, and I think they handled that really, really well. The way that it feels resolved but unresolved at the same time. It feels like he said what he wanted to say to her, but it feels like he also has so much more he wants to say. It's a really, really effective scene, and it's one of my favorites in the whole movie. Andy Muschietti also confirmed recently that he kind of wants to do Reverse Flash in a sequel, which a lot of people are upset about because they say it doesn't really make any sense anymore now, but think about it this way. That's a really great way to set up a conflict between Barry and the Reverse Flash. He kind of had to accept at the end of this movie that he couldn't save his mom, and it was just how it was supposed to go. And so he'll probably spend a lot of time having to try to come to terms with that, because that's not an easy thing to go through, I'm sure. But then in the sequel, he has to find out that his mom wasn't just predetermined to die randomly. There's just this fucking piece of shit who's been watching him and stalking him his whole life, who will always make sure that his mom is dead. The anger that would awaken fucking Barry Allen would be really, really interesting to me. I think if done properly, that sequel stands a chance of being a lot better than this first one here. Well, that doesn't mean I dislike this movie, honestly. I dislike a lot of shit about this movie, but I wouldn't really say I hate it or anything. After thinking about this movie for like a week and ranting to you for like 2 years now, I think I finally come to a conclusion about how I feel about this film. It's not the Flash movie I wanted or the one that the character really deserved, but it does have a lot of great moments. It reminds me of a much simpler time in the comic book movie subgenre. It has a lot of problems, but there's just something I find charming about it. Maybe it's the campy early 2000s tone or the fun action, but I don't know, man. I feel like this would have been my favorite movie ever if I was like a 5-year-old kid, you know? And I don't mean that in a bad way, really. Sure, nowadays I don't really find movies like Batman and Robin to be particularly great, but I have a general respect for these kind of movies for bringing me so much damn joy as a kid. I envy the children of today, dude. I thought we had it good with shit like Spider-Man and X-Men, but this year alone we've gotten both The Flash and Spider-Verse. Both movies that would have absolutely shattered my toddler mind. And some of you guys will probably call me an idiot and say I'm falling for the nostalgia debate that they're shoving in our faces, and yeah, you're pretty much right. But at the same time, I don't really care because it's a fun feeling, man. This reminds me of simpler times where bad superhero movies were still fucking badass. So while this isn't the Flash movie I've always wanted, and it's definitely not the one that we all needed, it's still a lot of fun. You probably won't be too bored watching this movie. 6 out of 10, is that fair? Yeah, that's fair. 6 out of 10. I already said that, god damn it.